we have to watch out for when we do what? Multiply or divide by?
A negative.
By a negative number. So, when you divide or multiply by a negative number, so anytime I'm dividing or multiplying by a negative number, that is not going to, like, change it. It reverses the inequality symbol. So if it was less, it becomes greater. If it was a greater, it becomes a less. Greater or equal becomes lesser. Okay? So your solving equation's the same, except when you multiply or divide by a negative number. Now, it does not matter if the equation has a negative number in it. It's just if you actually multiply or divide. That's the only time you're changing it. Okay? So we are not going to do this last one up here. We're going to do the first two. Okay? As we do that first one, first step, Vanessa, would be to do what? Get rid of the 7. How?
By adding 7.
Adding 7. Addition property, and this would be of inequality. So I do that, and I add Mason, and I end up with what?
24.
Okay, 24. Give me the whole equation you write down.
Negative 6a is less than or equal to negative
24. And the next step. Divide by 6a on both sides. If I divide both sides by 6a, I now end up with a negative 1 is less or equal to 24 over a. Did that solve for a?
No.
And did it solve for a?
No.
No. Can I divide by a? Do I want to divide by a? A should never be part of what you're dividing by. You're dividing by the coefficient of a, which was simply 6. But actually, Lauren, we don't really want to divide by 6. We want to divide by what? Negative. So you have to keep the signs with these. So I do that division, and Zach, when we divide by negative 6, I'm going to write down my answer of negative 4. Now, the most common mistake, and when we did this earlier in the day in the last period, everyone kept it the same, and they came up with a solution which was incorrect. But they did right away, they just kept doing like most of you will do, and they just went down here and said, well, a is less or equal to negative 4. And if you did that, which this is wrong, right? We know this is the wrong answer. But if you did this and you just kept the problem going the same way and you go, oh yeah, and now you think of plugging in a number. Like, if I plug in a number that is less or equal to negative 4, like negative 10, right? Negative 10, do we agree, is less than negative 4? And if I think, oh, if a equals negative 10, up here in the original problem, I would have had 60 minus 7, and will 60 minus 7 ever be less or equal to 17? And so when you're doing inequalities, you can always check these, okay? And so I know that when I picked negative 10, that didn't work, so this doesn't work, and it has to be greater or equal. And if I go back up here and I plug in an a of 0, if I put in 0, is negative 7 less or equal to 17? Yes, right? So because doing that just quick check, I'm able to see that right away, okay? So second equation. Logan, you ready to start us?
Yeah.
Okay. Subtract 5. Could you have rewritten this equation so that you have the variable first right away? You could have. And we're going to keep going. So I get negative 9. I'm going to have is less than negative 3n. Okay? Maria, next step. Divided by negative 3. And when we do that division by negative 3, what am I looking at, Abby?
3 is greater than 10.
And Pepper, we want to divide it, putting our variable first, so what would I have?
N is less than 3.
N is less than 3. So, because I think when you think of numbers this way, when you see that N is 3 is greater than N, some of you might be thinking like 4, 5, 6, right? When you think of reading it that way, which actually is not the case. It is really 0, 1, 2, 2 point whatever, up to 3, right? That is really what our solution is. So, should 0 make this true? if I looked at this equation? Should 0 make it true from what my answer is here? Yeah. And if you put it back in there, is -4 less than 5? Yeah, because we get 0 for that. Please, Jaden, don't do that. All right, so when we are looking at that, right, you can always check something also that would make it false if you're not sure. Please turn to that next page of your notes, page 105 that I handed back to a lot of you. Distributive property. So could we, since this is the only side that has our variable, could we put this first? Could we put this whole thing first and rewrite it? Because we always want to have our variable first with an inequality. We could. So let's do that. We're going to put 5 minus 2, and then it's 4m plus 7. And now, if I am writing that, Natalie, what should I put? Greater or equal or less or equal?
Less or greater than.
Yes, one of those two. Which one would you like to go with? Second choice or first choice?
I'm not there yet.
All right. So when we look at this one, it was open towards this whole thing that I wrote down first. So this one has to still be open towards that, so it is a greater or equal. Okay? We are going to be distributing. Okay? Are you ready to distribute, Keegan? Okay, 5 minus what?
Minus 8m.
Okay, minus 8m. Minus 14. Greater or equal to 15. Okay? Emily, let's add our like terms on this side first. Negative 8m. And negative 9. Greater or equal to 15. Okay, look, what are we doing next to solve? Oh, let's see. What are you doing, Caleb? Adding 9 both sides, right? And here's something I'll see students do. They'll go negative 8m equals 20. Yeah. And then they'll divide both sides by negative 8. Do you agree?
Totally.
Totally. Me too. I have to mark it wrong. You know what am I going to get?
You agree with you have to switch the, you put equal.
I put an equal, and some of you will do the same thing, and it's wrong if you put an equal and there's no equal. So it was greater or equal here, right? But then we divided, we actually have to switch it around to less or equal. Okay? So it is very easy for these little mistakes that some of you will make also in your homework. That's why I want to check, something less or equal to negative 3. Now, I know that, like, if I was going to graph this, I know that all the values less or equal to negative 3. That's what I want to be looking at. But here is the deal when I look at this answer, is that as I'm looking at this, I know that my number line at negative 3 here is 0, and here's like negative 6. I know this is the solution. So what I definitely know also is that this number makes it false, right? And if I would plug that number into the original equation, right? And I go back here and I put a 0 in. 4 times 0 is 0. I get negative. So I really have 5 minus 2 times 7. Should that ever be 5 minus 2 times 7 greater or equal to 15? No, this is negative 5 minus 14, right? That's never going to be greater or equal. And I knew that this was false, and I thought if I checked 0, it would be false, right? I thought by checking that m equals 0, it shouldn't work. And if I would plug in a number that I think is true, like m equals negative 20, right? I plug in negative 20 there, it's going to come out and it should work. And that's the key thing, especially when you take this test, okay, that you can check every answer. You should not be going, I wonder if it should have been switched, or pick a number that you think makes it false, and if it made it true, then you probably have the number line going the wrong way. And if it makes it true, then you probably should have your number line going in that direction, okay? This is where a lot of you on your homework, on page 105, when you were doing complex equations, wanted to move the numbers first. Don't do it. Move your variables. So our smaller variable, Lucas, that I want to get rid of would be that I want to either add or subtract would be what?
Add to B.
We're going to add 2b. And you always want to move the variables before the numbers. Okay, and you're going to see why, and especially the smaller one. Because if you move the smaller one, then you don't have to worry about dividing by a negative. So we get 5b plus 12 is greater than 27. Okay. We're going to subtract 12 from both sides. And when I do that, Hale, I'm left with
15. 5b is greater than 15.
It's greater than 15. And I divide by both sides. And b is greater than 3. Okay? And b is greater than 3 is our solution. Because you're going to have some questions that say, oh, if it's find the solution, solve it. Or, if not, tell if there's infinitely many or no solution coming out. Well, if it comes up b greater than 3, that's the answer. You do not get to write right behind this infinitely many. No. You do not write behind this no solution. This was the solution. B is every number greater than 3. Okay? So, just be careful for that. So we will have those special cases. Okay? So the special cases are like what we had before. The special cases are when we are looking at no solution and infinitely many. And a lot what we say instead of infinitely many is that the answer is all real numbers. Okay? So when does that happen? Again, move your variables first. Here you have to distribute first. They added 8a to both sides and they got 10 is greater or equal to 10. True statement, so we say all real numbers. What if I would have had something like 4 is greater than negative 2? That's a true statement, right? So anytime it's true, I'm going to write all real numbers. What if I would have had something like 10 is greater than 10?
That would be
That would be a false statement, right? 10 is not greater than 10, it's equal to 10. And that's when we use the second part, which is no solution. So you use no solution when it is a false statement, okay? You have to, and that's why I handed back a lot of your papers and said, you know, you never showed me this, that negative 5 is greater than 7. That's a false statement, right? It's never true. Negative 5 is never greater than 7. And so a lot of you got to this point right here on your homework on 105 and you stopped and you either said infinitely many or no solution. And I will look for you to follow through and tell me the two numbers, either that they're exactly equal or that they're not. But if you don't go to this step when we're on the test, then you say no solution or infinitely many, and you didn't show me the actual numbers, you just left this equation and knew I just know, I'm going to take off a point. All right, so just do it all the way to get rid of your variables when you are looking at that, okay? So, we're going to solve these getting rid of your variables. We're almost done. Almost done, and then you got time to work, which is good on a Friday, because you got a lot of problems in this assignment. Minus 5n, minus 5n, right? Keeping our inequality. We get 9 is less or equal to negative 1. Very false statement, right? Our answer is
No solution.
Done. On this one, Nick, first thing I want to do is add my like terms on that side. So I'm going to rewrite it as 8 plus 6x is greater or equal to, adding my like terms, what do you get?
7x plus 2. Or 6x.
6x plus 2. Jacob, I want to, my next step in solving this, what would you do? Subtract 6x. So always the variables first. Move the variables to one side of the equation, which in this case, 8 is greater than or equal to 2. That is always a true statement. So we are going to say that our answer as we are looking at this one is all real numbers. Every number that we choose is going to work.
How is it equal to 2?
It's not, it's greater. It makes that part true. It makes the greater part true. 8 is greater than 2.
Or
Greater or equal. It's greater or equal to 2. Yes. Good point. Which leads us into our complex equations, the and and the or. Knowing the difference of an and and an or. Okay? So when we are looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, this story problem, okay? So as we are looking at this story problem, you want to make a rectangular banner that's 18 feet long and has no more than 48 feet of trim. So, rectangular banner, draw a rectangular banner. And what do you know? Piece of information. What do we know on this? 18 feet long, right? So this is 18 feet. That's my length. Well, if it's a rectangle, you also have a width, right? And can it be 50 feet? No, it has to be less or equal to 48. Okay? Next thing. I want you to talk with your shoulder partner, and you can move up one as you're doing this and talk with those two. And what are we trying to find? We're trying to find the perimeter. I want you to try and come up with, if you get one formula for perimeter, I want you to try and come up with two more. So if you get one, you and your partner can give me a thumbs up. Oh, this is how you could find perimeter. If you get a second way, if you get a third way. Okay? So talk right now and try and write down as many as you can for perimeter. Partners came up with
2L plus 2W.
2L plus 2W. Anyone have a different way? Finding perimeter, what could you draw going all the way around it?
L plus L plus W.
L plus W, right? Plus L plus W.
Simple.
Right? Right? You just added going all the way around it. Perimeter, right? Anyone use a formula with a parenthesis? It's really 2 times the what? Length plus width, right? So all 3 of these formulas work for perimeter. And when you read a story problem and you're like, I don't get what it's asking me, you need to think, oh, am I working with the perimeter? Am I working with the area? What am I trying to find? Okay? And in this case, we are putting this banner, this is trim, going all the way around here, right? That's what we were trying to find. We know it can't be less or equal to 48. Which of these 3 formulas should we use? First, second, or third one?
Any of them.
Doesn't matter, right? I would take all of them for your equation. I like the last one. So let's go with 2 times, keep your feet off the desk. And we are putting down our length, which was 18 this time, plus W. Now, this equation is a lot different than the one over here where we had distributive property. Here you had to distribute. Do we have to distribute in our problem? Could we actually divide both sides by 2 and make it a much simpler problem? 18 plus W is less or equal to 24. So these 2 sides together, right, have to total to 24. And now I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides to get my solution. And my width is going to be less or equal to 6. So it says, what are the possible widths of the banner? Now, I know the beginning of the school year when we were doing those graphs, we kind of talked a little about the words domain and range. This is really important as we get to this one. When they say, well, what are all the possible widths of the banner? So we might say all possible widths of the banner, the width of the banner, right? And here's the most common answer I'll have from students. The width of the banner is going to be, maybe they use, instead of less or equal, they might say, like they did up here, no more than 6 feet, right? So could we say no more than? The width of the banner can be no more than, or you could have said less or equal, right? No more than 6 feet. And I would probably have to mark that, like take off a point or half a point on it. Because this is what you're telling me, right? That if I was going to graph this, and here's 6, here's 0, and here's -6, you're telling me that this answer is all of these lengths down here. It's not, right? Reality is, if we're talking about length, we can't say, oh, you know, I'd like a -2 feet, right, for the banner on the width. So this is where it's really important, in that W is going to be less or equal to 6 feet, and it must be greater than, not greater or equal, right? Because if it's 0, I mean, you don't have a width, right? So it's going to be n greater than 0. Okay? Someone said, can I write my inequality this way? Less or equal to 6 and greater or equal to 0? Yes. And I will tell you if you have one like this on the test, so on our test next week, there's a couple inequality questions. There's also a couple with the apposites. Then there's a couple that are absolute value equations that you have to write, okay? So that when you are looking at these, you got to just be really careful about how you set it up. Could I also have written it this way? Could I have put W lesser 6 and W greater than 0? And I would want not an equal here, I would just want a greater, okay?
Yeah.
You can write it with the word and, or you can write it as one big inequality. Next week we do compound inequalities, which look like this with the and the or, and we get into that next week, okay? So, in your homework,
Oh no.
all there is for notes. So,
No.
as you look in your homework, this is on page, quiet please. This is on page 190. It says you're doing 15 to 47 odd. And when you look at these, so 15 is a story problem, and it's not meant to be very hard, so don't make it that hard. And as you do 17 through 43, all of those either will have a solution or there'll be infinitely many or no solution. In class, if you have